In this tutorial we're going to be learning how to crochet a polka dot granny square. Start your granny square by either making a magic ring or a chain ring. I prefer a chain ring, so that's the method I'm going to show in this tutorial. To start making a chain ring, first make a slip knot using your preferred method. This is how I prefer to make my slip knots. Then make a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now slip stitch in the first chain to make a ring, so I'm slip stitching in there. So there's my slip stitch. Now if I give these chains a little bit of a pull, I can find the centre of the ring of chains that we're going to crochet our first round into. Start round 1 by making a chain of 3. This counts as your first double crochet stitch. That's a double crochet in US terms. In UK terms, this is called a treble crochet. I'm going to be using US terms for this tutorial. Next, make 11 US double crochets into the center of that chain ring. So in that space there, we're going to make 11 double crochets. So I'm going in there. And as I do this, I'm holding my tail next to my chain ring and I'm going to crochet over the top of it as I make these 11 double crochets, because that means I can close up the hole at the end. I will show you how I do that. So I'm going to finish off this double crochet. There's my first double crochet. I'm going to make another double crochet back into that ring, catching that tail there under my stitches, and I'm going to repeat this until I've made 11 double crochet stitches, and then I'll meet you back here at the end of round 1. So I've now made 11 double crochets, and as we're including this starting chain as our first double crochet, I've made 12 double crochets for the first round. So now we're going to do a slip stitch to join, and we're going to make a slip stitch in the top of this starting chain here. So I'm going in just there in that top chain of the starting chain. I'm going to make a slip stitch. So you can see we've got a hole at the center of our circle here, and if I turn this circle over so I'm looking at the back, I have crocheted over the top of that yarn tail as I've gone. If you've not managed to do that, just thread this tail on a needle and run it under all of those stitches. Then if I give this a pull, I do need to put my thumb over here just to give tension. Sorry that you can't see that. That should close up that hole at the centre. So if I turn it over, you can see we've now made a circle. And that's round 1 finished. Let's move on to round 2. So for round 2, you can change colours here if you want to. That will give you a square that looks like this, or you can continue on with the same colour if you want a square like this. I'm going to continue on with the same colour. If you want to learn how to change colours, I am going to be showing this at the end of round 2. So to start round 2, make a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3. That counts as a double crochet. We're then going to make another double crochet back into that same chain we slip stitched in. So in there we're going to make another double crochet. So including that chain we've just made, we've made 2 double crochets into that starting chain that we're counting as a double crochet from round 1. Into each stitch around, work 2 double crochets. So I'm going to make my next double crochet in the top of this stitch here, underneath both of the loops at the top of the stitch. I'm going to make 2 double crochets into that space there. So that's 2. Then I'm going to make 2 double crochets into each stitch around until I end up back at the beginning of the round, and I will meet you there. So here I am almost at the end of round 2, and I've just counted all of my stitches, and including this starting chain as our first stitch, I've made a total of 24 double crochets for this round. Now here I'm going to finish off with an invisible join, but you can finish off with a slip stitch just like we did at the end of round 1 if you want to. So to do an invisible join, snip your yarn tail to about 6 inches. Then use your crochet hook to pull that tail through that final stitch. Now we're going to do an invisible join. You can do this with a yarn needle if you want to, but I'm going to show you how I do it with just a crochet hook. So to do an invisible join with just a crochet hook, we're going to identify where our starting chain is, and into the stitch that's next to our starting chain here, we're going to go from back to front underneath both of the loops at the top of the stitch there, like that. And I'm going to grab my yarn tail and lay it over my crochet hook, and we're going to use a hook to pull that yarn tail through the top of that stitch like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on this yarn tail until this strand of yarn here is about the same size as the front loops of the rest of the stitches of this round. And I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going to put it underneath the back loop only of this stitch here at the end of the round. I'm going to go from back to front again. So from back to front, I'm going under just that loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull that through. Then I'm going to give this tail a bit of a pull just to snug those stitches up together. You can see now we've got a seamless join at the top of this stitch. So because we've not done a slip stitch here, you are going to need to weave this tail in really securely back and forth across the same area a few times. I do have a tutorial for weaving ends in that I will link down in the description. Okay, so now we're ready to join our neutral colour for round 3. So I've pulled up the yarn tail of my next colour, and I'm going to pick up my circle and I'm going to pick literally any of these stitches. I'm going to do it a little bit away from this yarn tail so I have space to weave my end in. So I'll go about the other side of it. I'm just going to pick any stitch and put my hook into the top of it. Then pick up my next cut colour, lay it over the top of my crochet hook, leaving a tail that's long enough to come back and weave in later. Then use your hook to pull up a loop through that stitch. We've now successfully joined this colour, ready for round 3. So just to make sure that this tail isn't going to go anywhere, we're going to lay it over the top of our crochet hook as we make our starting chain. And that just means that our tail is laid neatly along next to our stitches, ready to weave in at the end of our square. So start by making a chain of 4. This counts as our first treble crochet stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and come underneath both of those loops on my hook, and you can see that tail's now nicely over there ready. So I've made 1 chain, so 2, 3, 4, that counts as our first treble crochet stitch. That's a treble crochet in US terms. I'm then going to make a treble crochet in the same stitch. So 2 yarn overs, and then I'm going back into the same stitch to make that treble crochet. So there's my treble crochet. Then into the next stitch I'm going to work 2 double crochets, so just 1 yarn over at the start of the stitch. So 1 and 2. And then into the next stitch I'm just going to work 1 double crochet. And again the next stitch just 1 double crochet. So far I've worked 2 trebles into 1 stitch, 2 doubles into 1 stitch, and then 1 double into 1 stitch, 1 double into 1 stitch. Next work 2 double crochets into the next stitch, so 1, 2, and then into the next stitch work 2 treble crochets, so 1, 2. So that's one side of our square completed, and you can see by using those longer treble crochets that kind of pushes the crochet out to make that corner. Next, make 2 chains to make a corner space. Then we're going to repeat the steps we've done already. So 2 trebles into the next stitch, 1, 2 trebles into the same stitch, 2 doubles into the stitch after that, 1, 2, and then 1 double into each of the next 2 stitches. So we've got 1 double into this stitch and 1 double into the next stitch, then 2 doubles into the next stitch, 1, 2, then 2 trebles into the next stitch. 1, 2. Now that stitch there is my invisible join. You can see it's stretched open a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this tight again, and then I can come back and weave this in at the end. So next, make 2 chains to make a corner space, and then repeat that all the way around. So 2 chains, 2 trebles in one stitch, 2 doubles in one stitch, 1 double in the next stitch, and then 1 double in the next stitch, 2 doubles in the stitch after that, and then 2 trebles in the stitch after that, before doing a chain 2 corner space. So repeat that twice more until you've got 4 sides on your square and you've just worked into this stitch around here, and then come back to this tutorial and we'll fasten off together. So here I am almost at the end of the round, and I've just worked 2 chains here after 2 trebles in that last stitch there, and then I'm going to fasten off just like we did at the end of round 2 with an invisible join. There's my invisible join, and then we can go ahead and weave all these tails in. If you'd like some more beginner friendly granny square tutorials, I'll link a playlist down in the description, and then I'll see you again next week for another tutorial.